fire. I'm seeing fire outbreak. Just like that. Fire outbreak. Just like that. At a particular portion. In a particular portion of this world. Are you getting what I'm saying now? I'm seeing fire outbreak. A severe fire outbreak. Let's take note of this. Let's write this down. Let's write to this date. And let us follow. And let us pray that lives will not be lost. That souls will not be lost. Are you getting what I'm saying now? Let us pray because it is not the best. Let us pray because it is not the best. This fire outbreak is too huge. It is too huge. It is too huge. Let us pray. A part of the world. You get what I'm saying now? On the globe, it looks very little. But when they are projected, this is a very big place. Fire, fire, fire. The rescue team will not find it easy dealing with this fire. You get what I'm saying now? Yes, the fire team will not find this easy. Let us pray. It will not affect the whole world, but I'm seeing this affecting a particular portion of the world. Let us pray. Fire, 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 fire. This will disturb us. Are you getting what I'm saying now? Let us pray that no life. Are you getting what I'm saying now? I again told you, I saw a fire at a particular portion of the globe. Fire hitting a particular portion of the globe. Let us pray. Let us pray. There is a fire from the woods that are coming home. There is a fire from the woods that are coming home. There is a fire from the bush that are coming home. I'm seeing a fire that is burning. It is gradually approaching. Let us remember our word in prayer, and let's be careful with our homes, how we handle any gadget in connection with fire and electricity. Are you getting what I'm saying now? And let us pray against it, because the rate at which we're going to hear fire, 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 it will be mind-blowing. This is a strong fire. Are you getting what I'm saying now? Let us pray. Are you getting what I'm saying now? Remember the word in prayer. Pray for yourselves, pray for your family members, and pray for all people that God save us from this tragedy. Are you getting what I'm saying now? Yes. There is a God who loves us so much. Okay.
No one.
The climate of this earth, the weather condition, the climatic condition of this world is going to change drastically. You're going to notice something. Heat. The world will be warmer. The earth will be warmer than it is now. You get what I'm saying now? It will be warm than it is now. And there's going to be a lot of challenges that is going to make life over here difficult. Pray that God will take over and help this world.
The climate emergency is making itself felt across Europe. Record-breaking temperatures are fueling wildfires, burning out of control across huge swathes of France, Greece, Portugal, Spain, and Italy. Many of these areas are also suffering severe drought. The heat wave has now moved northeast, reaching as far as the United Kingdom, which has recorded a temperature of just over 40 degrees Celsius for the first time since records began. The extreme conditions have caused hundreds of deaths across Europe, most from the effects of the heat, but also including several people killed by fires in Spain.
Spain is on fire. With more than 70,000 hectares of land already going up in flames this year. Residents of this town in the northwestern province of Zamora were battling on Monday to stop their homes being next. But an attempt to dig a trench to stop the approaching fire almost came to a deadly end for one local man after his digger was engulfed in flames. Fortunately, he was able to make a narrow escape and was taken to hospital with serious burns. Elsewhere in the province, passengers also had a close encounter with the fires when their train made a brief hair-raising stop in the countryside. With emergency services battling fires all across the country, tens of thousands have been forced to evacuate. Many know they will have little to come back to.
We know, for example, that our house is completely burned. We also had a van arranged to travel. We bought the van when I retired, and now it's totally scorched. We have nothing.
Visiting affected areas in Extremadura, Spain's Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez said climate change was to blame for the devastation.
I want to say that evidently climate change kills. It kills people, kills our ecosystem and biodiversity.
In France, too, authorities are struggling to deal with record-breaking wildfires. In the southwestern Gironde region, 2 fires have already burnt through more than 17,000 hectares of forest within the last week. Strong winds have helped fan the flames, with firefighters unable to bring them under control. But weather forecasts do offer some hope of respite, with temperatures set to drop in western France as the extreme heat wave moves east.
DW correspondent Barbara Basil is in Le Testebourg near Bordeaux in the south of France. Barbara, we just saw how wildfires have been raging in southern France. What's the situation where you are?
The fires are still burning. We're in a little spot that has not burned yet. The police has blocked a large area around where the fires are still raging. So we couldn't get access yet. We'll try again later, of course. But what you see behind me is the typical pine forest of the area, and more than 100 square kilometers of this have already burned down because these fires have been raging now for almost a week. And if you look behind me, you think this is nice and green, but you look at all this stuff on the forest floor, it is tinder dry, and it just goes up like nothing. You don't even need a spark. The fire is driven by strong winds, and that's the problem at the moment, because the temperatures have let up a bit. We had more than 40 degrees here yesterday. Today it's down to 30-ish, so it's more bearable, and of course it's a bit easier for the firefighters. But the wind makes their life incredibly difficult because the fire jumps from one side of a road to the other, that jumps across the breaks they're trying to create, and so they haven't yet really managed to control the fires.
Well, the heat wave has now reached the UK. DW correspondent Jack Perrick is in London and joins us now. Jack, just how hot is it there?
It's extremely, extremely hot, to be honest with you, Terry. We're actually quite worried about our equipment in this heat. It sort of keeps on going over the temperatures that are really workable. I think where I am right now, it's somewhere in the 36, 37 degrees. We know that it's tipping over 38 in many parts of the south of England. And the prediction from the Met Office, which is the weather scientific organisation here in Britain, reckons that temperatures could go over 41 degrees Celsius. This is unprecedented, extreme heat for a country which is simply not accustomed to this kind of temperature.
Jack, UK infrastructure really isn't built to deal with temperatures like this. How much disruption is this heat wave expected to cause in the UK?
Yeah, there's a lot of train stations that have closed. We know that Luton Airport, the runway there, has got so hot that it needed to be repaired, that all flights were cancelled. There is still movement in this country. People are being advised not to travel, to ease the pressure as much as possible on trains, on buses, where there isn't the kind of levels of air conditioning that you might see in hotter countries in the south of Europe, or for instance in the Middle East. Where you can see behind me, I'm here outside the Tower of London though, and there is still a lot of tourists out and about. It must be said that most of the people that I've spoken to here outside this tourist attraction are from abroad. They are not Brits that have made their way to London to see the capital, but rather people that have come from abroad to visit the country, and therefore are still braving the heat to visit attractions like this in London.
Now, there have been warnings about the impact of this heat on vulnerable people. We're talking about the elderly and the infirm in particular. What's being done to keep them safe there in the UK?
Well, people are being told that they should be making sure they're in contact with their relatives. The NHS has stepped up, the health service here has stepped up its preparedness for any cases like this. They say that everybody should be looking out for one another firstly, but making sure that they're hydrated, staying indoors, staying out of the sun, especially as we get into the afternoon. It's expected that it's going to stay very, very hot until the early evening, and then temperatures are predicted to drop off somewhat, and Wednesday should be markedly cooler, up to 10 degrees Celsius cooler than what we're seeing today. So these 2 days, yesterday Monday and today Tuesday, these are the days where this heat wave is really hitting the UK.
Jack, thank you so much. Go find some shade. Our correspondent Jack Perrick there outside the Tower of London. Now, let's get a weather expert's perspective on this. Matthew Capucci is a meteorologist and a journalist at the Washington Post in Washington, D.C. Matthew, thanks for being with us again. The U.S. is no stranger to wildfires and record heat. How's the situation been there?
Really, things aren't too bad here right now, but we're expecting temperatures to jump to about 45 Celsius over the Great Plains of the United States. Now, we talk about Dallas, Texas, for example. Temperatures have hit 100 degrees Fahrenheit, roughly about 37, 38 Celsius for 13 days so far this month. Temperatures really almost record territory here, matching what they're seeing overseas in Portugal, Spain, and parts of the United Kingdom.
When you look at what's happening there in the U.S. and what Europe is experiencing right now, what goes through your head? I mean, we also saw extreme temperatures in India, too, not so long ago. Do you see a pattern here?
Most definitely. And China the other day saw a record dew point, meaning a record amount of moisture in the air. All this bearing the sign of climate change. Let's talk about the UK briefly, for example. They're expecting to hit 40 Celsius today, 104 Fahrenheit, which is an all-time record there. But the most impressive part with this is that right now, this is a roughly once in 100 to 300-year event. By the end of the century, thanks to human-induced climate change, it could be a once every 10 to 15-year event, made 10 times more likely thanks to climate change. So heat waves getting worse, getting longer, getting more severe, and having a much higher human impact.
Now, do you think that extreme conditions like this could become the norm in places like the UK that are really not used to it?
That's a really good point. You know, these conditions we're seeing right now in the UK might be normal for a place like Dallas, Texas, or Houston, or even Phoenix, Arizona, but they're most certainly not normal for the United Kingdom. Only about 5% of people there have air conditioning, and 6% of people are over the age of 80, meaning vulnerability is through the roof. That's one of the big issues we've seen so far, with about 1,500 people dead from the heat and more excess mortality, unfortunately, likely. So climate change is causing conditions to outpace our ability to maneuver infrastructure-wise. That's what we're seeing. So yeah, this will become both the norm, and we've got to adapt to this. We might need to start putting AC in places that never had air conditioning before. We might need cooling shelters in places that never had heat waves before. Things are getting worse for a lot of folks who are on the fringe of how high temperatures get, and we're seeing the impacts in real time.
That was meteorologist Matthew Capucci there. Well, as Germany also deals with record summer temperatures, senior officials from around 40 countries have gathered in Berlin to discuss how to tackle the impact of the climate emergency. The meeting comes ahead of this year's UN Climate Summit in Egypt. The so-called Petersburg Climate Dialogue, which ends today, was hosted for the first time by Germany's foreign ministry.
Forecasters are predicting Britain could see 40 degrees Celsius for the first time. Is extreme heat the new normal, even that far north?
Well, what we know is that evidence suggests that the severity, frequency, and duration of heat waves is exacerbated by climate change. So we tend to see heat waves happening more often, being longer in duration, and having more extreme temperatures than they used to before the 1950s, 1960s. So it probably is the new normal, yes.
Okay. You know, there might be some people out there who say, listen, I have air conditioning, I can just stay inside for a couple of days. Maybe this doesn't really affect me as much as others who are exposed to the heat. But we understand extreme heat also affects air quality and eventually public health more broadly. Walk us through why that is.
Okay, yeah, we have already a very good precedent, which is during the 2003 heat wave that affected most of Western Europe, there were 70,000 excess deaths related to just the heat alone. On top of that, you have like the high pressure conditions that is associated with heat waves tends to trap atmospheric pollutants in the lowest reaches of the atmosphere where people live, basically increasing levels of air pollution. Furthermore, the heat plus the insulation, the sunshine, tends to be conducive to higher ozone episodes near the ground as well. And ozone is a known lung irritant and can lead to cardiovascular disease as well. So these are just two of the extra ways in which heat waves can impact human health.
And to what extent do you see climate change exacerbating these extreme weather events?
We see that first off in the modeling studies that the climate change scientists have been carrying out for a number of years. They suggest that with increase in greenhouse gas emissions, the temperature in the atmosphere will continue to increase, basically making these heat waves more extreme, longer and more frequent. And we're seeing that to an extent in the way that record temperature highs are increasing and record temperature lows are decreasing mostly across the world. In particular in Western Europe, those heat waves are becoming far more prevalent than they used to due to a combination of atmospheric conditions and climate-induced change, human-induced climate change.
Thank you so much, Lorenzo Labrador. As we mentioned, scientific officer at the World Meteorological Organization in Geneva. We appreciate it.
6 million people in Chile's capital city, Santiago, woke on Friday to a haze of smoke and a public health alert as forest fires fueled by a historic heat wave sweep the country. The capital on Thursday recorded the third highest temperature the city has seen in 111 years, 36.7 degrees Celsius. Metropolitan Director of the National Emergency Office, Miguel Munoz, warned of dehydration.
Not only is the fire increasing in intensity, but also our National Forestry Corporation wildfire fighters and firefighters have a greater exposure to dehydration and exposure to high temperatures. That also causes health problems.
The state-owned National Forestry Corporation said firefighters are also tackling 18 fires concentrated in the country's central regions, as well as a smaller number in the south. Farmer Alejandro Alvarado is afraid his family's cows may have died. It is estimated that the forest fires burned more than 17,000 acres in the South American country.